Dad in 1985 walks into a bank. One salary, a handshake, and $40,000 later, he owns a 3-bedroom home in the suburbs. Cut to 2025. His kid scrolls Zillow at midnight. That same $40,000? In San Francisco, it won't even buy a parking spot. So what changed? Are today's generations lazy, or are they playing the housing game on hard mode? Wait, how did houses get so expensive so fast? In 1985, the median U.S. home cost $82,800. The median household income was around $27,000. That's roughly 3 years of income to buy a house. Fast forward to 2023, and the median U.S. home now costs $416,000, while the median household income sits at $74,000. That's more than 6 years of income, double the squeeze. So what happened? The easy answer is that prices exploded, but the real story is about credit and borrowing. In the 1980s, buying a house often meant tough mortgage rates of 10 to 15%. Painful, yes, but it kept a lid on how much people could borrow. You couldn't go wild at the auction because the monthly payments would crush you. Then came the era of cheap money. In the early 2000s, mortgage rates dropped below 6%. Then, after the 2008 crash, they plunged even further, bottoming near 3% in 2020. Cheap borrowing made people think, why not stretch a little more? Suddenly, instead of bidding $250,000 for a home, people stretched to $300,000 or $400,000 because the monthly payments looked similar. Multiply that by millions of buyers, and you get today's inflated prices. The cycle repeats. Easy credit, rising prices, then a crash. Remember the 2008 housing collapse? Prices had surged, loans were handed out like candy, and when the bubble popped, home values dropped 30% nationwide. But here's the kicker. After the dust settled, those who held on saw prices climb even higher than before. By 2022, U.S. housing had hit record highs again, worth $45 trillion in total value, almost double a decade earlier. So yes, houses got expensive fast, but not because bricks suddenly became gold. It's the mix of credit, speculation, and cycles of boom and bust. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Every time the system resets, the ones with money waiting in the wings scoop up the bargains, while everyone else falls further behind. Now, if homes are this expensive, why don't we just build more? Well, that's where the plot thickens. And it's not just about money, but power. Why can't we just build more houses? On the surface, it sounds simple. If houses are too expensive, why not just build more? After all, when supply grows, prices should fall, right? But here's the twist. In many places, we don't let supply grow freely. Take California. From 2010 to 2020, the state added 3.2 million new residents, but only built around 1.1 million homes. Why so few homes? Zoning laws. Entire neighborhoods are locked into single-family zoning, meaning no apartments or duplexes, just one house per lot. Local homeowners often resist change, NIMBY, or not in my backyard. Everyone wants affordable housing, but not next door. Now compare that to Texas. Cities like Houston have looser zoning. Developers can build more freely, and as a result, Texas built nearly 1.5 million homes in the same decade. Housing is still rising in cost, but nowhere near as brutally as San Francisco or Los Angeles, where median homes now top $1.3 million. It's not just America. In the Netherlands, strict land use planning protects farmland and green space. Beautiful, yes, but it squeezes housing supply in cities like Amsterdam, where prices doubled between 2013 and 2022. In Sweden, rent controls keep prices artificially low for old tenants, but new renters face decade-long waiting lists in Stockholm. One recent estimate said a young Swede might wait 9 years for a rent-controlled apartment. Demand grows, but supply is blocked. Who wins in that setup? The people who already own property. Their assets become more valuable every year, while newcomers face higher barriers. And this raises the big question. Is the problem really lazy young buyers? Or is the game designed to keep them out? Because remember, the parents who bought in the 1980s faced their own challenge. High interest rates. But they also had one powerful advantage we haven't talked about yet: timing. Your parents had a cheat code called timing. Yes, rates were sky high, but the key difference was that homes were cheap compared to incomes. Back then, even at scary interest rates, The cost-to-income ratio was manageable. Today, it's doubled. Painful interest rates, sure, but at least the starting line was close enough to sprint toward. Now fast forward to 2023. The median home price is about $416,000. Median household income? Around $74,600. That's more than 6 times income, even with today's historically low rates until 2022, hovering near 3% for a while. The sheer cost of entry skyrocketed. What once took a few years of saving now feels like chasing a moving target. Here's where the cheat code comes in. Inflation actually worked in your parents' favor. That 12% mortgage looked terrifying, but as their wages rose year after year, the debt shrank in real terms. By the 1990s, their salary increases made those fixed mortgage payments feel smaller and smaller. They built equity quickly as house values climbed, and every dollar of debt was being eaten away by inflation. Meanwhile, today's buyers face the reverse. Cheap rates in the 2000s fueled a buying frenzy. Investors, foreign buyers, and even ordinary families piled in, bidding up homes. That means younger generations weren't just competing against neighbors. They were competing against global capital. Zoom out, and you see the generational divide crystal clear. By 2020, baby boomers controlled about 70% of U.S. household wealth, while millennials, despite being the largest workforce in history, held less than 5%. Globally, the same trend shows up. Older generations bought when assets were undervalued, and now younger ones must buy at historic highs. So, were your parents financial geniuses? Not always. Many were simply in the right place at the right time, and inflation quietly worked as their silent ally. But this raises a deeper question. If money itself isn't the real source of wealth, what is? The hidden villain. Why money isn't wealth? Here's a question that seems almost too simple. If money made you rich, why not just print more of it? Every government has tried this shortcut, and every time it ends in disaster. That's because Manuel Ayau, the Guatemalan economist, nailed the truth decades ago. Money is not wealth. It's only a tool, a yardstick we use to measure and trade the real thing. So what is the real thing? Productivity, innovation, goods and services. Think about it. If a country prints $1 trillion but produces nothing new, what changes? More paper chasing the same bread, the same houses, the same cars. Prices soar, but people aren't richer. They're poorer because their money buys less. Look at Weimar Germany in 1923. Citizens brought wheelbarrows of cash just to buy groceries. Now compare that to countries that chose the harder road of reform. In the early 1990s, Sweden faced a meltdown. Instead of printing, they cut taxes and encouraged entrepreneurship. Within a decade, they became a hub for innovation, spawning Spotify and Klarna. Here's the hidden villain. When governments confuse money with wealth, they inflate asset bubbles. Housing, stocks, and even tulips in 1637 skyrocket in price. But underneath, nothing new is produced. That illusion always breaks. And that's the haunting question. If money isn't wealth and printing destroys trust, what does that mean for today's generation stuck with expensive houses and stagnant wages? Is it just housing? Or is the whole system rigged? Let's be real. Houses are just one piece of the puzzle. The frustration younger generations feel isn't only about rent or mortgages. It's about everything around them being more expensive while their paychecks don't stretch the way their parents did. And the deeper you look, the more you see a pattern that feels rigged. Take wages. In the US, the average worker's pay has barely doubled since the 1980s. Rising about 18% after inflation. Sounds okay, right? But compare that to college tuition, which has shot up nearly 400% in the same period. Or healthcare, which eats a bigger chunk of income every single year. Meanwhile, the stock market grew more than 3,000% since 1980. The divide is crystal clear. If you owned assets, you won the lottery. If you relied on wages, you fell behind. And it's not just America. In France, young people cram into small apartments, because Paris rents have doubled in 20 years while salaries stagnated. In Japan, urban workers face micro apartments barely big enough for a futon, because land prices in Tokyo remain sky-high even after their 1990s bubble burst. In Britain, mortgage rates are crushing buyers again. Interest rates jumped in 2023, causing monthly payments to rise by 40% for many families. Wherever you look, wages crawl while costs sprint. Why? Because assets, houses, stocks, education, even medicine, have been treated as investments, not essentials. Investors pour money in. Governments layer on rules. Credit stays cheap. And suddenly the basics of life become speculative chips in a casino. The middle class is stuck paying more for less. Here's the haunting question. If this system keeps funneling wealth upward, Is it broken by accident or by design? And if housing, healthcare, and education all feel like they're priced out of reach, what's left for younger generations to build on? So, what's the escape plan? Here's the truth. Your parents didn't buy their home at 25 because they were smarter or harder working. They played during a very different level of the game. Call it easy mode economics. Houses were cheaper relative to income. College didn't bury you in debt, and wages kept up with basic costs. Fast forward to today, and younger generations are stuck in hard mode. But even hard games have cheat codes and shortcuts. First, policy matters. In countries where governments allowed more building, homes stayed affordable longer. Texas, for example, builds nearly 200,000 new housing units a year and keeps median house prices close to 3 to 4 times median income. Compare that to California, where zoning rules strangle supply, and home prices sit at 8 to 10 times income. Similar stories play out worldwide. In Tokyo, relaxed construction laws let developers add millions of apartments, keeping rents stable despite massive demand. That's one clue. Supply freedom is key. Second, individuals who play smart can still break through. Take investing. If you bought just $10,000 of Amazon stock in 2001, when the dot-com crash left it nearly worthless, it would be worth over $1.2 million today. Or consider real estate in cities that were ignored 20 years ago. Places like Austin, Nashville, or Berlin, which doubled and tripled as demand shifted. The lesson? Wealth builds slowly, but only if you plant seeds early. Third, innovation is a ladder. The biggest opportunities often hide where supply is blocked. As Manuel Ayau said, money isn't wealth. Production, trust, and cooperation are. So is there an escape plan? Yes. It's not about waiting for politicians to save you. It's about spotting where supply is blocked, investing early in productive assets, and using the system's cracks as opportunities. If your parents may have played on easy mode, you're on hard mode. But every hard game has hidden shortcuts. If you know where to look, you can still win. Your parents had an easy mode, you've got hard mode. But hard games always have cheat codes, if you know where to look. Stick around, because the next video dives into exactly where those shortcuts are hiding.